Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second webinar in the Marketing Ops Revolution series. My name is Caitlin. I'm the Director of Corporate Marketing here at Allocadia, and I'm excited to be your moderator today. Before we dive in, I have a few quick housekeeping items for you. You will be sent a copy of this presentation after the session has concluded. We have some folks tweeting some key messages throughout the session today using the hashtag that you see on the screen, so please do join the conversation during the session or afterwards. And finally, you'll see in the bottom left of your screen, there's a box where we have questions. So if you're having any technical issues or if you have a question for our presenter today that you want us to answer after he goes through his presentation, please put them in there. So let's kick it off. We're really excited today to have you join us because the reason we put together our Revolution series was around the fact that marketing operations has evolved from a behind-the-scenes reporting and more of an organizational guru on the team to really becoming a key strategic driver and innovative leader within the marketing organization. We were hearing from our community that professionals like yourselves are looking for help with tips, tools, and best practices on how to make that shift. If this sounds like the journey that you're on or the journey that you're hoping to start within the next year, you're in the right place, and we're here to help you. As I mentioned, this is the second of a 5-episode webinar series that's focused on educating, empowering, and guiding you through this revolution of marketing operations. And our goal with these webinars is to give you insights into how the best of the best are leveraging technology, people, and resources to help you put marketing operations at the forefront of driving revenue for your entire organization. So today you're going to learn how others in the marketing ops community are leading digital transformation, championing marketing performance management at their organizations. And I'm really excited to introduce our featured speaker today. Samir Khan is the Director of Marketing Operations at Direct Energy. He's an award-winning leader who's focused on building marketing, demand generation, and analytics engines over the course of a decade and a half. He has led teams at e-commerce, technology, digital marketing at various enterprise and mid-market companies, and his teams have always seen significant growth in both revenue and sales. He's helped major brands like IBM, Rackspace, Macy's, Toyota, and T-Mobile define their analytics and digital program strategies, helping create the vision and infrastructure needed to support revenue growth. Today, Samir is going to be walking you through the journey he's taken around ROI and attribution, and he's going to be highlighting 5 myths and misconceptions that a lot of teams have around marketing attribution issues. So with that, Samir, I'll hand it over to you. Let's take it away.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Without getting to any detail and spending more time, I want to dive in directly on the agenda. So this is the agenda that we're going to talk today. We're going to walk through my attribution journey, so specific case study example of my personal experience in one of the organizations that I worked recently, and talk about what types of challenges, what are the issues that we experienced, how we were able to overcome the challenges, what type of market research, analysis, and frameworks that we took into consideration, and then eventually how we were able to go past the challenges, which I call busted all the myths that we had. So if there is one thought and one idea that I want to leave you with, that is attribution is a journey. It is not one point milestone in the journey of the customer. It's essentially a multiple step that happens across the journey of the customer, all the way from the first interaction they have had with you to the closed one and beyond. So keep in mind, whenever you think about attribution, a lot of people think, like, okay, is it one touch point that I want to really go after? Is it this particular campaign that I want to run? That's not the case. It is multiple touch points or multiple milestones. The one question that I have is, for the audiences, do you really understand your customer's journey? Think about it for a moment. Do you really understand your customer's journey? The customer's journey is unique, specific, and it depends on their circumstances. And what's interesting is after every customer journey, there's something new that's going to happen. So an interaction with your sales team, an interaction with your website, something they saw on your website, they downloaded your webinar, the things that are going to happen after that is going to be fundamentally different than what the customers originally came for. And that reminds me of when I was in the undergrad college, and this was the first time I was leaving my parents' house and going to study to a completely different city, and this was in Mumbai in India. And what's interesting that at the same time I was nervous, but I was excited because I was starting a new chapter in my life. For the first time, I was leaving my parents' house and going to live in a college dorm. So the college dorm and college campus were about a mile apart from each other, and there were two roads that connected the college dorm and the campus. And every afternoon, we used to go to the dorm because the dorm's cafeteria was cheaper and it was already paid for by my parents' accounts. So we used to walk from the college to the dorm. Now, during the monsoon season, the back road, which was the road that goes through the town, was completely filled with water. So we typically used to take the front road, which was adjacent to a major freeway. It was dangerous, but that was the only option because the back road used to get filled with water. So one afternoon, I was really hungry, so I told my friend, hey, let's go to the dorm and grab something to eat. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And it was raining pretty heavily, so there was no choice left for us to take the front road, which was adjacent to a major freeway. It was kind of like a small dirt road. So we were walking almost like half a mile down the road, and something hit me really hard from behind. And for a moment, like, I knew what was going on. I was confused. I was scared. And apparently something hit me and I fell on the ground. So after a moment, like, I tried to recollect myself, and I realized that I'd been involved in a major road accident. So apparently this 18-wheeler was sitting on my left foot. It was horrible. And after that, I spent about a year. I missed the college for an entire year. I went through multiple surgeries. But that's not the point. The point is that one milestone in my life's journey completely changed the way how I look at things. So when that series happened, is I realized that, okay, this same applies for the customers. Is your customer having that phone call to the salesperson that will completely change the way the outlook they have for your organization? It will completely change things they're going to do with the organization. And we all have been in that situation where we all have experienced some type of tragic circumstances dealing with other organizations where we were so frustrated that we didn't know what to do. So my question to you is, does your customer's journey look like this? It's a memorable and fantastic experience. They're like really excited working with your brand. They're gung-ho about your brand. They're essentially going to social media and talking about all the positive things. Or does your customer journey look like this? An accident about to happen. I can even imagine like how it feels like falling down from a horse. That's terrible. Or even worse, your customer journey is a big pileup of, it's kind of essentially a big mess of things. Your customers are experiencing one problem after the other, to the point they just give up. And I've worked with several brands as a customer, and I've been so frustrated at times that I was like, I don't know what to do. I can't take this anymore. I don't think I'm going to be able to be your customer anymore. I just gave up. And at least in our lifetime, we experienced this with one or the other brands where we just give up. We don't want to work with them anymore. So my organization, we had similar problems. We had customer issues. We had ability. We had kind of the lack of the ability to measure the true issues and true concerns that is impeding the performance of the organization. And fundamentally, there are two aspects or two areas where our problems resided. One was we were using a basic attribution implementation framework, and this is exactly how the implementation framework looked like that we were originally using. So we had our objectives. We didn't spend too much time on setting up stakeholder meetings, understanding their requirements, and going through the full requirements gathering process, doing the RFP. We just quickly took a list of objectives, and we got a quick approval from our stakeholders. And then we decided to use the existing tools, which was Google Analytics and Adobe Analytics. And nothing wrong about those tools, but the attribution capability of those tools are limited. to what you can do. So we decided to use that. We didn't want to spend too much money or time. And then we went to the market. Essentially, we started using the attribution and we started measuring the performance of the campaign. Now, the other problem that we had is in our organization, we have myths and misconceptions about marketing attribution. And I'm going to walk you through some of the myths and misconceptions. But generally, in most organizations that I work with, they always tend to have some types of myths or misconceptions. Now, it could be like some of the organizational leaders have past experiences, so they can bring that experience to the new organization, and that will add into the confusion, or that will kind of add to the misconceptions. There were some data issues that we were experiencing, data they were gathering from different tools. That was causing to this factor as well. So let's look at it, what those were. So the first one was we apparently had multiple attribution models, and not just multiple attribution models, but we had multiple attribution models in multiple departments. So we had our digital analytics attribution, which we got out of our digital analytics platform that was used by marketing. So all of the performance management that we did was based on our digital analytics attribution model. And when we came back to finance, we had a very specific breakdown of the numbers between the channels. What was interesting is our finance team was using a completely different attribution model. They were using the lead source model from Salesforce. And that's how they were distributing the revenue between the different organizations. So marketing gets XY based on the lead sources, sales get X amount of revenue, and the partner channel gets X amount of revenue. And to add to the complexity, the sales team had their own attribution model, which was based on lead owner. Now obviously sales operates based on the lead owner, so if it's a field sales, a partner sales, it's an inbound sale. That's how they were allocating the credit to each and every department. And when these three teams came on the table for the business review sessions, we all had different numbers because we were following a completely different strategy for attribution. The second problem that we had is we as an organization believe that our customer's journey is equal. So essentially what we felt like, okay, there is not rocket science. People come to our website, they fill out the form, and then eventually they become an opportunity and close one deal. And maybe they go through one or two marketing channels before they come to our website, because that's what we were seeing from an analytics standpoint. So we said, okay, yeah, customer journey is equal. What else? So the third thing was the digital marketing, because there was no way for us to prove that digital marketing is effective at post-opportunity stages or even pre-opportunity stages, closer to the close one deal. We didn't necessarily have the right type of attribution technology to show all the different touch points. We believe that digital marketing is only effective at the top of the funnel. We spend a lot of money, we bring people to the website, and the lead is generated, and that's end of story. We don't do anything else from a digital marketing standpoint that is going to be impacting a revenue cycle. The fourth myth that we had is, which in fact was not a myth, but it was based on data. So in a Salesforce, what it showed was the date of opportunity creation to close is 90 days. So there was a common belief in the organization that we go from prospect to customers in the same quarter. So we used to always get push from our sales team, and they used to say, hey, we're behind on the opportunity creation this quarter. Can you guys spend more money? Can you bring us more deals? And apparently we didn't have anything to say otherwise. And we're like, okay, yeah, we're going to try. Because we got a lot of pressure and we were not able to deliver, and they came back to us and say, marketing is not performing. And that was a very typical conversation that we used to have all the time. And last but not the least, which was also driven by data, which we believe that from a marketing standpoint, digital marketing was the only channel that actually generates a sale. And in fact, this is what we saw in the Google Analytics top conversion paths. So essentially, 95% of the sales, that's what Google showed us, was coming from digital channels. And offline was only impacting about 5% of the sales. So all of these things that were happening in the organization, and I was like, okay, maybe we're like one of the worst organizations that were having these problems, or maybe there are other organizations that are facing similar types of challenges. So before we go in the market and start investing a lot of time and money in buying or building a new technology to solve our problem, because there are like 7,500 technologies according to the latest Martech map that Scott Brinker puts up on his website. So instead of spending too much money in buying technology, why don't we go back and do some research? Look at the market, talk to people, try and understand what's happening. So one of the research that I came across, this was an interesting survey done by Demand Generation Report. What it showed was like 58% of leading organizations said that the ability to measure marketing performance and analyze marketing performance needs improvement, or it's worse. So it didn't provide a lot of insight, but it definitely gave me a comfort level to say, okay, we're not the only one that are experiencing this problem. There are tons of other organizations that are going through a similar problem. So then I said, okay, let's do more research. Let's find more details on what this really means and how people are using different types of attribution and multi-touch attribution specifically to solve their problem. So I'm going to talk about some of the researches in a bit, but before I get to that, why don't we start with a quick poll. So I would like to understand from your organization side, how are you guys using attribution today? So there are 4 answers, like, are you using for optimizing media mix, justifying your marketing spend to the organization, you're using attribution to measure the customer journey, or pay commissions to your affiliates? Can you guys take a few moments to respond to the survey? I really appreciate it. So then we can get on to the next step. So I'm going to give 5 more seconds if you want to take a chance to respond to the survey, and then we'll look at what the industry research tells us. So we're getting a lot of responses on justifying marketing spend, which I would say is presumably the #1 reason why someone would ever use attribution. So a lot of people are responding to that. A few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. So that's the result right there. Obviously, as I was saying, we're getting a lot of responses to justifying marketing spend, which makes a lot more sense. What's interesting is if you look at the reasoning for attribution, we are all at some point of time in our marketing career are asked to justify the marketing spend. So where I feel like attribution is very helpful. What I also find interesting that attribution is super helpful in optimizing media mix, and I think the latter, which is optimizing media mix, should be more prominent than the former. So let's look at the results. So then I looked at another study that was done, and this particular study kind of talked about the state of pipeline marketing, and this comes from the State of Pipeline Marketing report that Visible does. So what it showed is from organizational perspective, now a lot of people responded and said, justifying marketing spend is the #1 place where they invest the attribution technologies in. According to the market, optimizing media mix is the #1 place where other organizations use attribution for, which also makes sense. So I think both of these go hand in hand. And there are some people that like to understand the customer's journey, and there are some that essentially want to understand what their affiliate commissions are. So then one more research point that I came across was the organizations that are actually using attribution, they're seeing some significant improvement in a lot of different areas. So 84% more likely to be aligned with sales. So essentially your chances of alignment with sales when you're using a good sophisticated marketing attribution technology increases significantly. There's a 54% likely chance to have revenue reputation. Now we marketers, we always have a reputation of lead generation, we'll call it demand generation. Rarely, I would say rarely the word revenue gets associated with marketing teams, and maybe 5% chance across 100 when a marketing team is considered as a revenue organization. But what the survey says is when companies started using multi-touch attribution technology, they're 59% more likely to be considered as a revenue center instead of a cost center, instead of a demand or lead center. And then finally, they're 46% more likely to have a year-over-year growth in revenue that is 20% or more. So that was fascinating. Now we collected a lot of information and data that said, okay, from a research standpoint, we're good. Now let's talk about frameworks. So then I started looking into the market and trying to understand what are the different frameworks available when it comes to buying technology, specifically buying attribution technology. So I came across the Serious Decisions Technology Buying Framework, which I really liked. But there were certain things that I didn't like about that and that didn't fit my organization. So what we did is we customized the Serious Decision Attribution Framework to map it to our own organizational need, and this is exactly what we came up with. So this is my Advanced Attribution Implementation Framework, and I'm going to walk you guys through some of the steps here. So the very first step that we take here is alignment. You know, before we get to the requirements gathering process, we want to make sure that the sales teams, the telesales, the marketing, the field sales, all of those teams are aligned on core business objectives. We went through a prioritization list of like, okay, what are the key business objectives that we want to address? And how can we address those based on common pattern that we're seeing among the team? So one of the consistent problems that we had was the inbound sales team who used to work on MQL qualification. They said, okay, we're not generating enough MQLs, and that's the reason why we're not able to produce enough amount of sales or SQL for the sales teams. So we were like, okay, is that the real problem? Is that because we're generating a lot of MQLs and not enough volume of MQLs, and that's probably why it is? Or maybe we're driving a lot of MQLs and the inbound sales team is not doing their job. So let's find out, is it a quality issue, is it a quantity issue? Then we will align all the teams that we get into the requirements gathering process. So in the requirements gathering process, what we did is we took the functional capabilities, which is essentially, hey, either we need people, we need a technology, or we need some type of resource to achieve solution to these problems. So we gathered those requirements, we put into different functional capabilities. Then we started doing research in the market to see what providers met to our functional capabilities requirements. And I said, okay, for attribution, it definitely looks like we have very limited technical capability, so we definitely need a third-party provider in order for us to be able to solve our problems. So we got into the research phase where we looked in the market and we found a provider. We worked with a company called Visible, which is now apparently acquired by Marketo, and Marketo acquired by Adobe, so technically Visible is now an Adobe company. I'm looking forward for them to be integrating their attribution with Adobe's core digital analytics platform. But anyhow, so we selected Visible as a provider. We made a recommendation to our team, and that got approved. Then we went to the implementation cycle. It took us about 6 months for the overall implementation. And then finally now, it's been quite a while since we implemented Visible, so we're in the governance phase. We're managing and making sure everything is running correctly. Then here's a quick overview of the Visible implementation, sort of the implementation architecture, if you may. So there are different pieces to the puzzle. So we have the Visible technology is talking to multiple areas. We have JS script that is implemented on the website. We have the UTM parameters that we use to measure our campaign and feed that data into the Visible's data center. Then we have our Salesforce, which is also integrated with the Visible app. We use a platform called Outreach, which is the outreach.io platform. A lot of people use that. It's a pretty common outbound sales platform. Then we have our Amazon Redshift data center. So essentially, this attribution technology is connecting to all the different pieces in a variety of different ways. So on the website, we are using JS script. For Outreach.io, we are using the sales activity data. For our campaigns, marketing channels, we're using UTMs. For offline campaigns, we're using Salesforce campaigns. So all of this is coming together in one place, which was not happening before. And in the Google world of attribution and the Adobe world of attribution, we were only capturing one or two pieces of the puzzle. What Visible did is allowed us to capture all of these pieces together. And this is how the attribution journey looks like. So we started with a very basic digital attribution, as we talked about before. Before we went on to go and capture everything and start reporting and everything, we said, let's take a small example. We took our paid search, and we said, okay, we want to know all the way from the click to the close one deal, how many true close one deals comes from paid search, and align that to specific types of keywords. So we started with paid search, and we started optimizing our paid search not just on the lead level, not only in the opportunity level, but all the way from the close one deal level. And we saw almost 200% growth in our paid search year over year. So after we saw this exponential growth on our paid search performance, we went on to the campaign attribution. So on the campaign attribution side, we as an organization, we were struggling to show the value of our events. We used to do a lot of trade shows and events. And essentially, majority of them were straight out of the bat. We collected the leads, we upload the leads in Salesforce, and we say, okay, let's look at the performance. In a lot of cases, we did not see the trade shows and events perform when it comes to opportunity creation and close one deal. What Visible allowed us to do was the ability to show that the trade shows and events are good in terms of creating new opportunities, but they're far better in moving these opportunities further. So we apparently saw by introducing a trade show and event to an existing opportunity, our chances of conversion increased by 30%. So we started to see this amazing insights that were coming from the attribution platform. Then we said, okay, now let's capture the partner. Let's capture the outbound sales team. They're using the Outreach.io platform. And let's start mapping all those different touch points and see how does the customer journey look like. And what are the different types of touch points that we need post-opportunity creation or pre-opportunity creation, but post-lead, that will help us develop new types of programs or improve our existing programs. And so finally, we got into the phase where the data warehouse project would allow us to not only look at these touch points, but also inter-session touch points. So between the session and within the session, we want to understand what are people doing in that session. And what we found that a lot of people were using content very specifically. We didn't have that capability before, but with the data warehouse project that we started, we were able to see sessionized data for these touch points, which was, again, miles and miles ahead of where we were before. So by following these best practices, something fundamentally changed in the organization. So remember, we had those 5 myths and misconceptions. We were able to overcome all of these myths and misconceptions one by one. So the first one, if you guys remember, we needed multiple attribution model across the organization. The conclusion that we came up with was we don't need multiple attribution model. In fact, we need a steering committee. And essentially, the steering committee, this is how it looked like. We had people from all different areas. So we had marketing and sales stakeholders. We had operation managers from marketing and sales ops and technology teams, financial operations. We had executive sponsors, and then we had IT operations for any IT-related projects. And all of these people came together to have consensus, like before we go and invest in the technology, before we go anything major, we want to have approval go through the steering committee. Because obviously if the executive sponsors are not ready to fund it, if the IT team is not committed on the timeline of implementation, if finance doesn't want to allocate revenue, it's not going to work. So we built a steering committee to help us drive and overcome the challenge. Like, hey, this is the place where we're going to agree on attribution model. This is also the place where we're going to agree on the new things that we're going to implement in the organization. So that myth was completely busted. The second myth, if you remember, that we believe that the customer journey is equal, well, to be honest, it was not. What the Multitouch attribution platform showed us that the customer journey is not equal. As a matter of fact, less than 2% of the customer journey may look equal, and it's pretty much irrelevant for the organization to spend time on a very specific journey, because every customer goes through a different journey. Some customers, they may come through a webinar like this, and then they go into their pipeline and probably interact with search. They get on the phone call, talk to the salespeople, and their outcome will be completely different. While others will be purely digital until the point they get invited to an offline event like a trade show or a conference. And that will look completely different. So this myth was completely busted because we had the notion like, hey, the customer journeys should all look same, and if we can crack the code somehow, like figure out like, hey, this is the customer journey, and we're going to rinse and repeat, and we're going to solve the problem. But the moment of truth came that the customer journey does not look good. Organizations that are chasing a very specifically defined customer journey that want to rinse and repeat is not going to happen. So we busted that myth. The third myth that we had, which was the digital marketing only influences the top of the funnel, with the help of the attribution platform, we were able to show that digital marketing is effective not only in the top, yes, it drives a lot of leads, but it's also impactful after the lead creation stage where we use emails. We use the email nurture programs. We have our webinars. We have our video content that people use prior to opportunity stages and even right before the close one. So that was busted. Then the fourth myth, which we believed was, which salespeople believe, that from creation to close happened in the same quarter. Absolutely agree. Creation to close happened in the sales quarter, and that's what Salesforce shows. But the origination, the first interaction that the customer had with us all the way to close, it's actually 135 days on average. So then we went back to the sales team and said, hey, I know you want us to spend more money in the same quarter so you can drive more opportunities, but what our attribution technology showed us, it takes about 135 days for us to really materialize the budget that we're spending on these leads. So give us more time, and we're going to be able to bring you better opportunities for the next quarter, because that's how long it's going to take. We busted that myth. Last but not the least, which is digital marketing is the primary influencer on the channel. That's what we believe in the Google Analytics show. Remember, it showed that 95% of all of our deals are coming from digital, only 5% offline. So when we look at the last touch model, which is pretty typical to standard analytics platforms, 100% of the deals comes from digital. When we look at the GA multi-touch model, I'm not even talking about standard model, I'm talking about GA multi-touch, 5% of that is attributed to offline. When we look at the advanced attribution platform multi-touch model, it was actually 50-50. So digital marketing only contributed 50% of the deal, while the rest 50% were coming from offline sources. So that myth was completely busted as well. So we were able to accomplish all of this because of that attribution technology, because of we not only spend a lot of time, energy, and resources understanding why we need something, we developed a case, we were able to come and have a very sophisticated framework where we got the organization aligned and work together. And then finally, we were able to develop use cases and case history and case studies to show that, hey, what we originally planned for, we were able to accomplish a lot of it. We may not be able to get 100% of it, but we were able to make miles and miles of leaps ahead from where we were originally. So with that said, I'm going to open up this webinar for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Samir. That was fantastic. So as Samir said, we are now into the questions section here. First up, I have a quick question for everyone on the phone. If you could share your answers in the box, I'd be really interested just based on what Samir's been talking about here. But how are you managing your spend, and how are you addressing some of those issues of trying to figure out like what you're spending to actually look at the attribution of your programs? So Samir, for us though, let's dive into some questions from the audience. What was the organizational reason for your interest in attribution? Like, basically, it looks like they're asking, like, how would you answer the poll question that we put up there earlier?
Oh, cool. Like the ball is not in my court. That's a good question.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, the way I would think is I would put a high priority in optimizing media mix. That will be the #1 area. Obviously, we're going to get a lot of pressure from areas where, hey, we want to justify, in my current organization, the same issue, like we want to justify the marketing spend, even though we see the marketing driving things, but that's obviously something that comes very quickly. especially when the organizations are not revenue driven yet from a marketing standpoint. But I would put a lot of emphasis on optimizing the media mix.
Okay, excellent. That makes a lot of sense. All right, next up question. You said earlier in the presentation you were previously using technology you already had in-house to try and tackle some of these attribution issues. How long did you battle with or use that in-house solution before you realized you needed to start looking at different pieces of technology?
It was a long battle. It went, we essentially talked about different solutions and the problem that we're facing with our technology almost like 6 to 8 months. So we spent a lot of time, almost about a year was at the point where we were like, okay, we want to use a more advanced version of the attribution. We want to go past the basic attribution, I would say. So it takes time. You're not going to be able to change organizational perspective overnight. And no matter where you go, the new organization will have very specific requirements about the problem. So present your case, be persistent, bring out new studies, have a dialogue, have team discussions before you get to the new era. Okay,
awesome. I think that makes a lot of sense, and that actually leads us really well into the next question is, with this framework, you just spoke about kind of alignment. How did you get alignment across the revenue teams at Direct Energy to create a solid foundational understanding of what you were trying to put in place with this attribution solution?
Well, the good news is a lot of people are data-centric here. So the idea that we presented, the idea of attribution was specifically like multi-touch attribution, distribution of credit between the channels, and then giving marketers the granular visibility of their channel performance were all new. When we introduced the idea, we not only talked about how this is going to benefit us, but we also showed them the real value of it. So for example, we started looking into our online and offline organic channel. We start to show okay, right now, because of the flaws in the attribution that we have, we're misallocating 100% of the credit to one channel. What we need to do is we need to appropriately allocate to both channels, so then we come into the budget planning sessions, we can use this data to plan the budget more effectively. So we went through a series of educated process, and that helped us allow people to get on the same page and understand what we're trying to do. We did not just implement a technology and say, hey, we're going to change the numbers from tomorrow. That will be very dangerous to do. So instead of that, we're taking time, we're educating people, we're making progress, we're showing them things in Excel before it operationalizes in Tableau or other BI tools. So those are the steps that I would suggest taking before boiling the ocean.
Okay, fantastic. We've got a pretty specific question here for you. You suggested nurturing leads and then introducing them to events you plan to attend. What's the best approach on this strategy?
So one of the things that we do is, and we were not doing this before, so when we identified the value of the events from an attribution standpoint, we started developing nurture programs specifically for our events. So every event had 4 to 5 series of emails that are going to go to the specific batch of audience. And then essentially 1 month before the events, 2 months before the events, 1 week before the events, we send a reminder. 2 days before the event, it was local, we sent a typical reminder. Then after the event, we did the follow-up with slides and presentations that we want people to download. So because of development of specific nurture programs for all of our events, we saw a tremendous lift in not only people that were showing up at the events, but also the engagement and people coming to a booth and having conversations. So that would be one very clean-cut email strategy that I would suggest for events.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think events is an area that people always find tricky, so that's a really good tip for folks out there listening. Okay, one more question here. So they say, Samir, it's almost as though individual attribution methods don't matter, nor does the complexity of the method matter when it comes to attribution. How would you react to that? Would you agree? Do you think that these individual attribution methods do matter, in fact?
That's a great question. And one of the things that I talked in my presentation is the multiple attribution models. Now, in my experience, there are cases where you need multiple attribution models, but you don't need multiple attribution models when you're coming, sort of like come to Jesus meeting, when everyone is gathering together on the same table and they're bringing in different data. That is dangerous. That's a problematic issue. But where you need multiple attribution model is very specific channel optimization. So when I talked about paid search, for example, when we want to look at the success of paid search, we were very intrinsically focused on the performance of paid search itself. We didn't necessarily want to see how paid search works with events and how it works with emails and how it interacted. That was a secondary thing. What we wanted to show, because we were using a third-party vendor to run our programs and we were investing significant amounts, we want to show the return on investment on paid search. At that point of time, we relied very heavily on the first touch attribution model instead of multi-touch, because it made natural sense for us to do that. Another example, when you want to measure the performance of your events that are not necessarily the producers of, the originators of opportunities. At that point of time, you want to look at the events within the opportunity cycle, not on the first touch basis, because when you look at the event's performance on the first touch basis, you're going to lose a lot of visibility and credit to the event. So then you need a specific attribution model to look at a very specific stage where the events are happening, which is between the lead and opportunity creation in most cases for our side. So yes, attribution doesn't necessarily have to be complex. There are cases where you can go by using very simple attribution methodologies for specific channel optimization. But at the end of the day, when you want to report the business results, when you want to have a larger gathering where multiple people are bringing in revenue data, when you want to get finance and agreement, you want to have a little bit more sophistication to your attribution than generally using the first touch, because normally salespeople are going to be the first one that are going to say, hey, you're claiming that all these opportunities came from paid search, but it's our salespeople that are spending a lot of time and cycle qualifying these leads that are not necessarily qualified in the first place. So hope that answers that question.
Yeah, no, I think it's incredibly important to realize that it's a complex issue, but there's a lot of different ways to address it. So I think that leaves us time for one last question. So Samir, what's next on your marketing performance management roadmap? Where are you feeling the pain now within your organization, and what are you thinking you're going to be tackling in the next 12 months?
So the next 12 months is going to be quite interesting. We have what we have internally we developed as a marketing operations maturity curve, which is essentially very similar to the analytics maturity curve, but it talks about how in the current stages we are in the intermediary phase, at least in this organization, where we're going through the change, we're talking about attribution, we're implementing the new technology, but then we want to get to a more sophistication where we want to enter the predictive phase and prescriptive phase. So in the predictive and prescriptive phases, we're not only using the attribution, but we're trying to test it with advanced predictions. Like one of the things that we're doing right now is trying to figure out the best locations for us to target based on the customers, the longevity of the customers and the type of customers. So we're doing some predictive analytics on zip codes to identify those locations, so we can go back to our partner team and say, hey, these are the places that you want to go target. That's one example. The other places I want to see is doing a full-blown campaigns operations reporting, not just from an attribution standpoint, but from an end-to-end show, like, okay, what are the different phases? How are we planning the campaigns? How are the campaigns structured and organized? What does the framework look like for the campaigns? Are we taking into consideration the different aspects, like pricing aspect? Or is there going to be specific pricing? Is there going to be specific offer? How can analytics and marketing ops help in those initiatives? So that's where we're heading. So at the end of the day, we're kind of the Uber cycle that may look like for marketing ops and marketing analytics is kind of the prescriptive phase, where you're spending less time on the basics, on the development, but you're being more and more prescriptive, that everything that you drive from your team leads to an end result, an impactful end result for the organization.
That's great. Thank you, Samir. And I think you make a really valid point there, because every marketing team is going to have a different journey to address any issue, like what you're just talking about, some of the predictive or prescriptive issues that you're tackling next. some of the attribution concepts that you went through in your presentation today. Similar to how every customer has a different journey as they interact with your company, every marketing team is going to have a different journey in how they are going to address some of these bigger, meatier issues that are coming into them. So for those of you on the phone, if you're committed to continuing this journey, please join us for the future upcoming webinars that are in this series. As I mentioned in the beginning, there's 5 sessions total, all from different awesome marketing leaders like Samir, who started revolutions at their own companies and are improving the way that marketing teams operate and drive impact. Next up is going to be next Tuesday. It's Anna Sue of Commvault, who I saw was listening in today. Hi, Anna. Anna's going to show us how she has created this amazingly integrated tech stack and is gaining control over her investments and her results in order to create more efficiency and more impact at her organization. So if we go in here, you can see this is the link if you would like to attend these upcoming webinars. We really hope you do. We think this is going to be a great way to just get some key learnings on how other companies are putting really cool processes and technologies into place like what Samir showed us today. So before I wrap for the day, I just did want to re-mention to everyone, we are actively tweeting with that hashtag that you saw at the beginning, hashtag MarketingOpsRevolution. So please join the conversation online. And thank you so much, Samir, for your time today for presenting. And thanks to everyone on the phone. We hope you enjoyed the content.